Crimea used to be Russia's shining jewel. For years, it stood as a symbol of strength on the Black Sea, something Moscow bragged about after taking it in 2014. But that once celebrated prize has now turned into something very different, a trap that's closing tighter every day. What was once a showcase of power has become a place of smoke, wreckage, and desperation. Warships from Russia's Black Sea Fleet are going down one after another. The radars that once scanned the skies are silent. The famous S-400 missile batteries don't answer. Airfields that once buzzed with aircraft now lie broken and scorched. The strangest part? This unraveling wasn't caused by a massive navy or a bigger army. It's being done by a smaller Ukrainian force, relying more on brains and gadgets than brute strength. Drones, long-range missiles, and clever tricks have brought a much larger military machine to its knees. Inside Crimea, around 60,000 Russian soldiers now find themselves boxed in. They're not alone. About 1.5 million civilians are stuck with them, living in fear and isolation. Escape routes are gone. Bridges and ports have been wrecked. The skies overhead no longer feel safe. Supplies are running dry. No fuel, no ammunition, no guarantee of safety. Ukraine has managed this without even having a navy of its own. Instead, it's turned to pilotless planes, explosive sea drones, and precise missile strikes. Each hit tightens the noose. One of the clearest examples came on September 21st. That night, Ukrainian drones struck the Saki airbase, where rare Russian amphibious aircraft, B-12 Chaikas, were kept. These Cold War-era planes weren't ordinary. They could take off from land or sea, carrying heavy torpedoes and scanning for submarines. They were meant to be Russia's eyes and ears over the Black Sea, guarding against any threat below the waves. But that night, the eyes and ears were blinded. The attack rolled in just after midnight. Drones pierced the air defenses, and explosions shook the base in waves. Fire spilled across the runway. Hangars rattled like tin cans in a storm. The sky glowed red. By morning, at least 2 of the B-12s were reduced to burning wrecks, aircraft so rare that each loss felt like a hole punched in Russia's naval strategy. The attack didn't stop there. A Russian Mi-8 helicopter near the hangars was hit too. Just days earlier, 2 more Mi-8s in Crimea had been destroyed. Piece by piece, Ukraine was dismantling Russia's ability to move troops, watch the skies, and respond quickly. Then came another blow. The Nebo-U radar system, one of Russia's prized long-range early warning eyes, was taken out. This radar had covered both Crimea and the Sea of Azov, giving Russian commanders precious minutes of notice if danger was coming. Its destruction meant silence where there had once been constant watchfulness. But the damage wasn't only physical. Each strike carried a psychological punch. Taking out old but symbolic systems, like the B-12S, was more than destroying hardware. It chipped away at Russia's military identity, showing that even its most iconic machines couldn't survive in modern warfare. Step by step, the fortress of Crimea is being remade into something else entirely. A place where steel, ships, planes, and lives sink into the earth, leaving only smoke and echoes behind. On the peninsula, the walls are closing in. You can feel it in the air. About 1.5 million civilians remain, along with nearly 60,000 Russian soldiers, and every day that circle grows tighter. Walk along the beaches of Yalta, where once the wealthy spent summers in their shining villas. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the hum of tourists, it's gone. In its place is silence, broken only by whispers of worry. Sevastopol, the naval heart of Crimea, tells the same story. Its bustling markets no longer thrum with noise. Shelves sit bare. Military bases ration what little is left, and even soldiers line up for canned food instead of hot meals. In the barracks kitchens, the smell of fresh bread has been replaced by the metallic tang of tinned rations. Hospitals, both military and civilian, are buckling under the weight of crisis. Wounded soldiers wait too long for evacuation. Medicine cabinets grow emptier by the hour. Exhausted doctors rotate through endless shifts, 3 in a row, clinging to duty even as their hands shake from fatigue. In maternity wards, mothers give birth in dimly lit rooms. Patients with diabetes and heart conditions count their pills, hoping for one more day's supply. At night, whole cities switch off their lights, partly to save what little energy remains, partly to hide from the drones buzzing above. But this darkness is more than a blackout. It's the darkness of fading hope, of people staring at taped-up windows and wondering how much longer they can endure. And still, the television screens hum with Moscow's voice. Propaganda insists everything is fine, that stability holds firm. But everyone knows the truth. Stability exists only as pixels on a screen. Outside the frame are cold shelters, shuttered warehouses, and families living with fear nailed into their windows. To understand how Crimea reached this point, you have to rewind the clock. Back to 2014. Back to the day Vladimir Putin stood before the world and declared victory. Crimea has returned home, he said. For Russia, it wasn't just about grabbing land. It was meant to be a grand comeback, proof that Moscow could shape the world again. Crimea was to be Russia's unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Black Sea, a dagger aimed southward. But there was one thing Putin didn't count on: Ukraine's refusal to bow. And more than that, Ukraine's gift for turning technology into a weapon of survival. From the beginning, Kiev built its war plan on three bold pillars. The first, and the riskiest, was to break Russia's pride, the Black Sea Fleet. On paper, it sounded insane. Ukraine didn't even have a real navy, while Russia's fleet had dominated the region for 2 centuries. But Ukraine had something else: brains over brawn. It started with a thunderclap. Ukrainian-made Neptune missiles found their target, sinking the Moskva, the fleet's legendary flagship. That wasn't just the death of a ship, it was the death of a myth. A symbol of Russian invincibility now lay at the bottom of the sea. Then came a new kind of navy: swarms of small, fast, unmanned kamikaze boats packed with explosives. Machines like the Magura 5-5 darted across the waves, hunting down warships worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Huge landing ships like the Caesar Kunikov and frigates like the Ivanovets were struck one after another. Every month, another Russian vessel vanished in smoke and fire. By the time the list of destroyed or crippled ships stretched long enough to read like an obituary, the results were undeniable. Ukraine had eliminated or disabled at least 1/3 of the entire fleet. The humiliation was so great that Russia's warships abandoned Sevastopol, the base they had called home for 200 years, and fled east to the distant port of Novorossiysk. The mighty fleet of the Black Sea was no longer a master of anything. It had become a cornered force, hiding in its own cage. And that was only the first stage. With the fleet pushed back, Ukraine turned to its second target, the shield over Crimea. Russia had bragged about it endlessly: its S-400 and S-300 air defense systems, advertised as the most advanced in the world. Batteries of these missiles were meant to make Crimea an impenetrable fortress, a place where no Ukrainian aircraft or missile could ever hope to strike. But Ukraine found a way to crack it. The strategy was as simple as it was lethal: send swarms of cheap, homemade drones to soak up the defenses, to confuse the radar operators, to trick the systems into firing at ghosts. Then, once the shield was distracted, unleash the real punch. Storm Shadow and ATACMS missiles, guided with precision and carrying devastating payloads. One by one, the impenetrable air defense sites fell quiet. The second phase of Ukraine's plan unfolded like a carefully choreographed trap. First came the bait: swarms of cheap, buzzing drones and low-cost missiles aimed at Russian radar systems. They weren't meant to kill. They were meant to expose. Each fake target forced Russian operators to switch on their radars, to give away their positions, and to waste millions of dollars worth of interceptor missiles on decoys that cost a fraction of the price. Once the radars lit up and the air defenses were distracted, the real strike followed. Storm Shadow missiles slipped through undetected, gliding low and silent. ATACMS roared in at blistering speeds, moving faster than the eye could track, faster than sound itself. The blows landed hard and precise. One after another, Crimea's untouchable defenses collapsed. S-400 launchers, command posts, and, most importantly, the radars that held everything together were shredded in fire and smoke. The crown jewel of Russia's air defense network, the 55Z86U Nebo-U radar, was taken out in a final strike. That radar had been the brain of the operation, the eye that made the S-400 shield work. Without it, the billion-dollar missile batteries scattered across Crimea were nothing more than blind hunks of steel. The shield was broken. The fortress stood naked. But Ukraine wasn't done. To seal the trap, one more step remained: cutting off the lifeline that tied Crimea to Russia, the Kerch Bridge. That 19-kilometer stretch of concrete and steel wasn't just a bridge. It was Putin's personal monument, built after 2014 as proof that Crimea was bound to Russia forever. But in 2025, it became a target. First, a truck packed with explosives ripped through its surface. Then, wave after wave of kamikaze sea drones slammed into the pillars beneath. Ukraine didn't need to collapse the whole thing. The goal was subtler, smarter. Make it unstable, make it unreliable, make it too dangerous for heavy convoys to trust. And they succeeded. For months, the bridge has remained crippled, half in operation, always under repair, never truly safe. That single choke point being unreliable plunged Russia's troops in Crimea into a logistical nightmare. Now everything, ammunition, fuel, food, must come in by ferries creeping across the strait, easy prey for Ukrainian missiles, or by land through a thin corridor constantly under threat. What was once a proud highway to the peninsula has become a narrow, fragile thread. The siege is complete. And with the noose pulled tight, the future of Crimea narrows to just a few grim paths. 3 possibilities take shape, each showing a different fate for the peninsula and a different gamble for Moscow's shrinking room to maneuver. The first? Sustained pressure, slow and suffocating, a grip that never loosens. If Ukraine keeps grinding away with the same steady rhythm it has now, the 3 pillars of Russia's hold on Crimea, radar eyes, air defense shields, and supply lifelines, will keep eroding, week by week. Picture it like a drumbeat of destruction. One week, a radar station goes silent. The next, an air defense site loses its vision. After that, a rail line is blown apart, a bridge shaken, a convoy stranded. Each strike is small by itself, but together they create a pattern that never stops, a rhythm of constant loss. The Kerch Bridge, in particular, becomes the center of this tension. Every attack against it isn't just about trucks or trains, it's about rattling the entire nervous system that keeps Crimea alive. Even in the ports, Sevastopol, Feodosia, Russian warships now live by the clock. They only dare to sail in small windows of safe hours. And those windows, they're shrinking with each passing month. This kind of slow strangulation depends on one thing: Ukraine's ability to keep producing. Drones, seaborne kamikazes, FPV swarms, guided missiles, they all need to come off assembly lines with discipline and regularity. If that cycle continues, Russia will be forced to swallow a new setback every week. It's death by 1,000 cuts, a model of attrition that steadily turns Crimea from an asset into a burden. But there's another path Ukraine could take, the second axis. One of sudden acceleration, a lightning storm of strikes all at once. The arrival of F-16 fighter jets, fresh Western munitions, and advanced radar jamming tools could change the game. With these, Ukraine wouldn't just hit what's reachable, it could strike what's truly strategic. Imagine, in a single week, radar stations like Nebo U and Podlet falling silent, air-base command centers flattened, and both the Kerch Bridge and the Chonhar crossing crippled. A tempo so fast, so synchronized, that Russia's defenses can't keep up. Such a blitz wouldn't just smash equipment. It would scramble communications, shred morale, and overwhelm the repair crews before they could even react. The whole system would collapse under the weight of too many fires burning at once. Could Russia recover from such a shock? Only if it had deep reserves, backup radars ready to roll, alternate command centers waiting in the wings, replacement gear lined up. But war fatigue runs deep. Western sanctions have gutted the defense industry. And right now, no one sees those reserves waiting in the shadows. That's why this second axis carries the possibility of something far more dramatic. A single devastating strike with consequences that echo for years. The Kerch Bridge sealed for months. The Chonhar Pass blown beyond repair. A fuel terminal in Feodosia going up in flames and never coming back. If something like that happened, Crimea would stop being a fortress and start being a giant trap. And so the question hangs heavy. What can Russia do?
If you've made it this far into the video, it means you're enjoying what we do here at Euro Bulletin. Take a second to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more updates and insights from Europe and its partners. Let's dive in more into the subject.
The Russians are fighting back with tricks. Across Crimea, mock versions of radar systems, Nebo-U, Podlet, Costa, are popping up in empty fields. Decoys meant to lure drones and missiles away from the real thing. Camouflage nets are stretched tight across launchers. Heat sources and reflective panels are planted to confuse sensors. To the naked eye, they look convincing. To a drone flying high, they glow with just enough false promise to draw fire. For a time, this deception works. The first reconnaissance waves get fooled, wasting ammunition on shadows. But when the real strike follows, the illusion doesn't last. Thermal signatures, electromagnetic fingerprints, radar reflections, all of it gives the decoys away. The real systems can't stay hidden forever. And even if the trick buys a few nights of safety, the cost piles up. Every decoy must be built. Every camouflage net must be deployed. Every crewman pulling double shifts grows more exhausted. The defense holds, but it bleeds strength with every hour. The Black Sea Fleet shows the strain most clearly. Its warships, once symbols of dominance, now skulk close to their bases. Short, nervous sorties. Only during carefully protected hours, never when the risk runs too high. Some vessels never leave port at all, their usefulness reduced to floating targets behind the safety of coastal defenses. In trying to protect the Navy, Russia has hollowed it out. A fleet that does not sail is not a fleet at all. Piece by piece, Crimea has lost the qualities that once made it Russia's fortress. It cannot shield its skies. It cannot freely move its ships. It cannot feed or fuel itself without outside lifelines. Every act of defense comes with a new bill to pay: money, time, manpower. Every declaration of success only buys a brief pause before the next crisis. And in that widening gap, Ukraine and its allies see more than just tactical gains. They see a strategic opening, an opportunity that reaches far beyond the peninsula itself. The third axis is the one Russia clings to most desperately: escalation. If slow attrition bleeds them dry, and if a sudden Ukrainian surge could break their defenses completely, then Moscow's answer is to change the rules of the game. That means bringing in whatever reserves still exist, pulling S-300 and S-400 batteries from other regions, stripping units from the Arctic or the Far East, and pouring them into Crimea. It means pressing every factory in Russia to work around the clock, trying to replace what sanctions and strikes have already destroyed. It means leaning on Iran for drones, on North Korea for shells, on whatever partners will trade weapons for cash or promises. But escalation isn't just about equipment. It's also about fear. Russia can launch heavier missile strikes on Ukrainian cities, hoping to sap morale and distract attention. It can threaten the use of tactical nuclear weapons, as it has before, trying to scare Kyiv and the West into hesitating. It can attempt to stretch the battlefield into new regions, Odessa, Kharkiv, even along NATO's borders, to force Ukraine to fight on too many fronts at once. The problem is that every one of these moves carries its own poison. Pulling air defense from other regions leaves gaps elsewhere. Factories running non-stop can't escape shortages of microchips and electronics, strangled by sanctions. Foreign partners can supply weapons, yes, but not in the quantities needed to match the sheer pace of Ukraine's strikes. And nuclear threats, repeated too often without action, begin to sound like empty echoes. Even the soldiers on the ground feel this contradiction. Reinforcements arrive, but they come with stories of being pulled from other vulnerable fronts. Fresh equipment shows up, but it is thinner, older, less reliable. The circle around Crimea doesn't loosen. It only shifts shape. So escalation becomes a gamble. It might buy time, it might create a shock, it might even force Ukraine to slow its hand. But it risks turning the battlefield into a spiral of chaos that Russia itself cannot control. And this is the immutable reality that all three axes lead toward. Crimea is no longer the fortress it was in 2014. Every option for Moscow, attrition, shock resistance, or escalation, drains its strength in a different way. From Kyiv's perspective, Crimea is a prize being reclaimed piece by piece. But from Washington, London, Warsaw, and Brussels, the collapse of Russia's hold on the peninsula looks like something far larger, a once-in-a-generation opening. For years, the Black Sea has been Moscow's playground. Russian warships sailed freely. Its submarines stalked beneath the waves. Its missiles threatened NATO's southern flank. Crimea was the anchor of that power, the unsinkable aircraft carrier projecting strength far beyond its shores. Now, with each Ukrainian strike, that anchor rusts away. NATO intelligence officers see more than explosions. They see opportunity. Every radar system blinded means fewer Russian eyes over Europe's skies. Every stranded warship in Sevastopol means less reach into the Mediterranean. Every convoy forced onto ferries instead of the Kerch Bridge is another crack in Russia's illusion of control. For the West, this isn't just about helping Ukraine survive. It's about permanently weakening Moscow's ability to menace its neighbors. A trapped fleet, a broken bridge, an isolated peninsula. These are not just tactical victories. They are strategic shifts that redraw the map of influence across the Black Sea. And the more Crimea bleeds, the more credibility Russia loses abroad. Allies like China, India, and even traditional partners in Central Asia are watching carefully. If Crimea, Putin's proudest conquest, crumbles under pressure from a smaller neighbor armed with Western tech, then the myth of Russian resurgence collapses with it. That's why Western capitals see Crimea not just as a battlefield, but as a test. If the siege holds and the peninsula turns into a trap, Russia's aura of power fades, and NATO's deterrence shines brighter. If Ukraine fails, Moscow regains leverage and confidence. For the West, then, supporting Ukraine isn't only about principles of sovereignty. It's about seizing the chance to reshape the balance of power in Eastern Europe for decades to come. And so, Crimea hangs in the balance. On the surface, it is just a peninsula. Bridges, ports, airfields, cities now dimmed to darkness. But beneath that surface, it has become the sharpest fault line of the war. For Russia, it is the crown it cannot afford to lose. For Ukraine, it is the key to victory. For the West, it is the gateway to a new balance of power in Europe. Every week brings new strikes, new losses, new gambles. Decoys appear, ships hide, bridges shake, and skies burn. But no one knows which axis will dominate. Slow strangulation, sudden collapse, or reckless escalation. What is certain is that Crimea is no longer untouchable. The fortress has become fragile, the jewel has turned heavy in the hand of its keeper. And somewhere in the smoke, in the silence between drone engines, in the blackouts over Sevastopol, the unanswered question grows louder. Is Crimea still Russia's crown? Or is it already a trap waiting to close?